Good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I am Alain Giamy, the Vice President of the World Association for Sexual Health, and it is my privilege today to introduce you to the new Sexual Justice Initiative, which is developed by WAS at the moment. Just to remember that since the last 25 years, WAS has been advocating and elaborating the definition of the sexual right included in a declaration that was published in 97 for the first time at the Congress of Valencia. And since these last 25 years, WAS has advocated in favor of the sexual rights of individuals and groups who were excluded, stigmatized, vulnerable, and put outside of mainstream society. So this Declaration of Sexual Rights, along with other organizations who advocated and promoted sexual rights, has helped a lot, has contributed to the development of a strong empowerment of those groups through social movements, organization, different types of movement in favor of sexual rights. Now, with this new declaration, with a new initiative on sexual justice, WAS is trying to go beyond, farther, of sexual rights. Sexual rights had the ambition to empower individuals, to give individuals the possibility to struggle for their rights, for their inclusion in society, to access to health care, and more important, to citizenship. The new Sexual Justice Initiative will have the ambition to change, to promote structural, systemic change, which means that we are going to try, and this is an ideal, of course, to change the system and the barriers that the system is putting on the way of the possibilities of citizenship, equality, and non-discrimination, which is, as you know, one of the major ethical principles in the medical and health practice. So it is my pleasure today to introduce you to the members of the steering committee of the WAS Sexual Initiative, which have been put together by WAS. And the idea for today is that we asked all the members of the steering committee to present their specific own perspective on sexual justice. So you will see they come from different parts of the world. They represent different aspects, dimension of society, and they will develop, they will explain how they see sexual justice. So it is clear that this is a preliminary contribution to a wider consultation that WAS want to set up during the year 23, and this is supposed to be a way of inviting you to this international consultation. So thank you for listening, the people that you are going to listen just now, and we shall meet soon, and feel free to contact us if you are interested in contributing to sexual justice. Thank you.
I am Esther Corona, and I am the former World Association for Sexual Health Vice President, and actually, right now, I am the chair of the International Liaison Committee. Um, I have been exploring during the past few months the whole idea of sexual justice, trying to understand how it came out of other uh, concepts that have been developed over the years, such as sexual health, sexuality itself, and sexual rights. It's understandable that the very concept of sexuality, the new paradigm, came out of social transformations in the past century, such as the revolutions, the youth revolution, women's revolution, and also what we would call the sexual and reproductive health changing paradigm, which gave the possibility of separating sexuality and pleasure from the actual sexual activity, sexual intercourse, through the advent of safe and effective contraceptives back in the past century. Out of these and out of the outcomes and out of the realizations of how we shaped the concept of gender and how we shaped particularly sexual rights, came a full understanding, I think, all throughout the world of what we meant by sexual rights. Sexual rights are entitlements that should actively protect all people against all social, economic, and political forms of discrimination. However, it is evident that we are very far from this ideal. The changing conditions in the world that we know, the challenges in environmental and migration, rising conflicts, have made us realize that we need a concept which is more encompassing. And this is why we are exploring sexual justice, to try to find a way of approaching sexuality from a very intersectional point of view, to try to understand how injustices in general are tied to sexuality, and to try to see how these can overcome the growing inequalities in the world, such as we have now in gender and growing challenges in sexually related violence. This is the reason that we at WAS are working on trying to craft a new way of understanding sexual justice and try to use that focus as a way of approaching what the new challenges that we have. It's true that sexual rights are still the basis, but on the other hand, we have to use these as pillars, while at the same time building a new structure to support a way of reaching out and trying to help and trying to work with underserved communities, such as even women right now, migrants, LGBT communities, and many other communities that have been left behind in our understanding of sexual rights, but at the same time, having sexual rights as our main support. Thank you.
My name is Dr. Sharful Islam Khan. I work as a social scientist and head of the program for HIV/AIDS in ICDDRB, which is an international research organization located in Dhaka, Bangladesh. I have been working very closely with vulnerable and marginalized population in Bangladesh and surrounding regions over 25 years. Thank you for giving me this forum to express my thoughts on sexual justice. Not only us, when governments of different countries have been supporting sexual rights as an integral part of sexual health and well-being, at that moment, the World Association of Sexual Health has proposed to move forward with a broader domain called sexual justice. Though we may be transitioning into a system approach of sexual justice, we are not abandoning the concept of sexual rights. Let's take a closer look at Bangladesh. Widespread silence still remains around sexuality. Sexual rights are yet to be shaped into the legal framework. As homosexuality is criminalized, gender and sexually diverse people often struggle to express their identities and access to services. Nevertheless, Bangladesh has manifested some remarkable breakthroughs. The government of Bangladesh has approved transgender women as a separate gender category. However, they still cannot exercise sexual justice in their real life situation, including their dignity, equality, citizenship, and autonomy. When I was introducing the concept of sexual justice in a group of community people, the common voice that was echoed, that when we suffer from day-to-day injustice, you are talking about sexual justice? It sounds like a sweet dream, which may never come true in our life. Anyway, what I understand, rather than theoretical construct, sexual justice should guide our sexual rights related implementation challenges. As sexual justice is positioned at the intersection of social justice and sexual rights, it is vital to develop a simple and palatable framework of sexual justice. I strongly recommend that we need to work not only with researchers and policy planners and program managers, but we have to work with the political leaders and the religious leaders as well in a holistic framework with solidarity to enhance the knowledge base of sexual justice. In conclusion, let me clearly pronounce that a country's ability to achieve sexual justice depends on its socio-cultural, political, and religious landscape. And that's why nothing can be achieved overnight. Rather, we may need years of persistent advocacy, and we need to start somewhere. Otherwise, it would be impossible to achieve the dream of a sexually just nation. Let us begin today. Thank you very much.
Hi, my name is Dr. Zara Stardust. I'm a sex worker, a lawyer, and a postdoctoral research fellow at the Centre for Automated Decision Making and Society at the Queensland University of Technology. And my research explores sex tech and sexual justice. Over the last few years, I've been involved in a national qualitative research project in Australia that explores sex work stigma. And one of the key issues that came up recurrently was access to justice. Communities spoke to us about the ways in which the criminalisation and licensing of sex work, as well as police targeting of sex workers, impeded their access to legal avenues for redress. Sex workers were concerned about the ways that police, judges, and media saw them as responsible and blamed them for their experiences of crime. People reported to us police entrapment, police inaction, and expectations of bribery when they went to report issues like theft or stalking or sexual assault. These are issues of sexual justice, and they require a holistic response that includes the decriminalisation of sex work, but also goes beyond it to build a legal, political, social, and cultural environment that does not support whorephobia or slut shaming, and instead enables accountability and access and equity. At present, my research explores how sex technologies can be used in the movement for sexual justice. This year, I coordinated a public interest sex tech hackathon, where we brought together marginalized communities, technologists, and designers, as well as sex educators, to find out what public interest sex tech could look like. We heard many ideas about how we could harness technology as a form of counter-surveillance to monitor the police, to monitor governments, to monitor big tech, as well as to provide access to information, resources, support, and justice mechanisms for users. Sexual justice is broader than sexual rights. It involves questions of political economy in terms of who dominates the narratives, who controls the infrastructure, who owns the technologies, and how power operates to produce systems of sexual hierarchy, stigma, and oppression. The movement for sexual justice is timely, and it compels us to think about how laws, policies, and practices around sex intersect with a range of other key issues in our time: the climate crisis, unaffordable housing, healthcare, poverty, colonization, defunding the police, and prison abolition. We need more than sexual pleasure. We need more than sexual rights. We need sexual justice.
Over the course of recent decades, almost nothing in the field of sexuality has taken on as much importance as the need to struggle against forms of stigma, discrimination, and outright oppression that in especially conservative times have increased in relation to sexual diversity, in relation to gender diversity, and in relation to sexual and gender difference. The impact, the kind of physical and symbolic violence that these negative forces have caused in relation to communities and individuals who are different in terms of their sexuality or in terms of their gender is one of the most negative aspects that we need to work on. We have developed a number of tools. Among other things, for example, work on sexual rights, which has been growing since the 1990s and has become an increasingly complex and important field, has offered one way of addressing these kinds of issues, particularly through legal systems and through formal mechanisms that provide forms of support for those who experience negative attitudes and behaviors because of their difference, and also more generally for ways that society can organize itself more effectively to nurture those who are different. But sexual rights has its limitations in terms of the kinds of mechanisms that it works with. And I think we're increasingly perceiving the importance of trying to look more broadly at what I think we can describe as sexual justice. A notion of justice includes rights as an important part, but it also links up to ideas of social justice, to social movements and the way in which social movements can fight for a just society. And a just society has to be just in relation not only to social and economic exclusion, but to forms of sexual and gender exclusion. The sexual justice initiative that we're trying to develop through WAS, I think, is fundamentally linked to building that more positive conception of how we can work to defend sexual justice more broadly.